This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Released on Sunday, March 29th, 2015, This Agile Life, episode 78. Squirrels!
Squirrels!
The software industry transforms more and more every day. Agile methods are quickly replacing traditional ones. The question is, are you agile enough? This podcast is devoted to agile and lean software development. Time to welcome your agile coaches on This Agile Life.
Welcome to This Agile Life, a podcast about what it's like to be agile in the real world. So my name's Jason, and we're going to have a podcast today, and I got a few great hosts who are going to join me for a great discussion about agile practices, values, and principles. So joining me tonight, we got Natalie. Natalie, introduce yourself. Who are you?
Hey guys, my name is Natalie. I work at a company here in St. Louis, and this is my second time on This Agile Life. And after listening to my first podcast, I may talk a little slower this time because I realized how many times I said and ah, and I apologize for that for all the listeners to the last one. I realized I have some crutch words.
So we got Natalie here tonight, and also joining us tonight is kind of a person who was here early on when This Agile Life got started. Matt, tell us about yourself.
Hey, so I'm Matt Corwell. I'm currently in Seattle, Washington. I was co-hosted some of the first episodes of this podcast. You may have heard me way back when. And then I got shipped off to a cave in a corner of a dark building and got buried in the muck and the mire for a little while. It's been about a year or more since I've hosted. So I'm here. I'm excited. I'm enjoying beautiful Seattle and ready to chat.
So we truly have at least we've gone across the states tonight because we've got people in the Midwest. We got people on the West Coast, which is awesome. Also joining us is we got this person who has become, he was actually on This Agile Life when it started, but he didn't ever say anything. And it's, of course, our friend Lee. Tell us about yourself, Lee.
Oh, I actually have to say something about myself. Well, I live here in St. Louis, like lots of us here that do this podcast. And I've been doing Agile for about 7 years and enjoying the heck out of it. I have learned more in 7 years than I have in the previous 20 or so that I have been coding. So I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
And Lee, you know why you have to tell us something about yourself? You know why?
Why is that?
Because you're not a resource. What are you?
I'm a person.
Yes.
Darn it.
Yes. And we have one other person with us tonight. And who is that? That person is Craig. Craig, tell us about yourself.
Hello. I feel like I'm on the dating game.
Ooh, yes. The Agile dating game.
I am an Agile practitioner, not an Agile coach. I like to join your team and help your team figure out what to do next. I prefer Ruby on Rails, but really anything I can help your team with, I like to do.
I like the fact that you don't you disavow the coach label.
Whoa!
Hey, if I'm a coach, then I'm a player coach.
Ooh, that's cool. And or guess what? He's hanging out with John too much. John Sextra, who's also on This Agile Life sometimes. He can't join us tonight. And
sometimes
John just wants to go and fire everybody. Fire the Scrum Masters, fire the BAs. I don't know. Anyways, he's crazy like that. So, and of course, my name is Jason. I'm Jason Tice. Great to have you guys all here tonight. And what we want to do is we want to do a little bit of active coaching because we're going to do a round robin game here. And this is a game that is something that anyone listening could do in a retrospective. And so the way we set this up is I asked a question, and that was, what's something that all of us who are out there helping people to understand Agile and adopt Agile values and principles, what is something that we see people doing that we feel they could improve? And so we've all had a chance to think about this, and everyone has come up with one thing. And what we're going to do to get this kind of conversation started, each person's going to share their idea, and then we're going to vote on it, and we're going to talk about whichever one kind of has the most votes. So is there a volunteer who would like to share first? And this is the part of the retrospective where it's really helpful to have like a balloon that we could pass around, but we're all on Skype, so we can't do that.
I'll go ahead and take a shot.
Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you, Lee. Go for it.
Okay. So one thing that I've noticed just, I would say in the last year or so, is that a lot of places that try to do Agile adoptions, they try to bring in Agile practices wholesale. They don't take the time to figure out what they can do to get better. They just latch on to all these different things that they think are Agile practices, and they do them all at once and think that that's going to make them better. And the problem is they don't really understand any one of them, and doing them half-heartedly or wrong or in the wrong context or that sort of thing. They just end up getting frustrated, and they say all this Agile stuff is a bunch of BS. It didn't work for us at all. And that's what I see as one of the biggest problems with companies adopting Agile.
Okay, so for fun, I'll come up with some names here. I'm going to call that the Agile buffet. So it's like someone goes out, it's like going to the buffet line, and you like say, you know what, I want some crab legs, I want some, stir fry, I want some lasagna, and just dump it on my plate. So they ordered too much. Okay, so we got an Agile buffet. What else do we have?
So I'll go ahead and add mine.
Okay.
Mine is product owners and their vision. How can they improve both explaining and selling their vision to the team? So a trend that I have noticed recently is that product owners will tend to not give enough time and effort to explaining that to their team, and that can have cascading effects with everything. An unclear vision, no team buy-in to the vision, and then everything else, planning, all of that kind of stuff just starts to go to pot.
So I can't help, if anyone's got a better name, yell it out, but to me that's the product owner vision light bulb burned out or something.
Yes.
No vision.
That's
burned out. The burned out light bulb. We'll call it
shared
that.
vision or unshared vision.
Yeah. Okay. So that's clear. Craig, you got one?
Mine's pretty terrible compared to those. So I was reminded today about someone had mentioned the retrospective prime directive on Twitter, and they didn't know what it was called actually, but they used it in their retrospectives. And so that reads, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. So my problem is I was on a team where I didn't feel like the team actually believed that. And that was a problem. And it got to the point where I didn't believe that people were doing the best job they could either. So I don't know that Agile could help us with this, but if you guys have any ideas, I would appreciate them.
Okay, so that's this whole prime directive, which thank you for sharing that. That's a great piece of advice for everyone, and it's sinking. No one cares. So the prime directive has burned out or is not floating. Okay. Matt, you got one or?
Yep. So I was thinking, and I think one of the challenges I see that I think is often an impediment to Agile adoptions is the people over misuse of the Agile manifestos, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, to where I've seen pushback from teams who say, well, if we're going to be Agile about it, that means we don't have any process at all because we should just focus on the individuals. And I saw our co-host Amos tweet the other day about that processes are necessary until good habits are developed, and then we can do individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And I'd be interested in seeing how to work within the spirit of individuals and interactions, but with still bringing the processes in when people are opposed to the process in general.
Okay. So this is kind of I'm going to call it finding the balance, because that's what you're talking about. So
fair enough.
Okay, so we'll call it the balance between people and process and tools. And I threw one in there, which is kind of abstract. And what I observed is, a lot of people, they kind of want to go out there and they want to use, this was really, I want to share for John, because he loves to talk about MBAs. And what managers do, to exactly what you said, Matt, they want to impose process on everything. because they want to control things. And in reality, there's some of the research that was done by someone by the name of John Cotter. He has a change, he calls it change leadership. And it really talks about what management should be doing is, again, allowing people to ask hard questions, just like Woody Zuhl talked about a couple episodes back on number 76 for This Agile Life. And, everyone's doing workshops on this, reading books, doing blogs. Why is no one actually then doing this? Or very few people are adopting these change leadership techniques that are intended to empower people. So that was kind of my idea, was talking about this idea of change leadership. So, and alas, we have a problem because we have 5 great ideas. So we need a vote. So should we want me to run them down, or do you guys remember them?
Let's go ahead and review them.
That's fine.
Okay, so we'll review them, especially for the listeners. So here are our 5 awesome ideas. And guess what? I don't think what we don't discuss on this episode of This Agile Life, I think we're going to have to come back to a few of these on future episodes. So we had this whole idea of what Lee described as the Agile buffet. That is that, we just kind of try to get a smorgasbord of stuff and we try to make it all work and it really doesn't, or maybe it does. We've got this idea of the product owner vision is not being communicated from Natalie. We got what Craig mentioned about the prime directive, and no one else really cares about the prime directive. We've got Matt's question about the balance between individuals and interactions and processes and tools. And then we've got my questions about why people really struggle to embrace change leadership and empower people.
Well, I would vote for the Agile buffet. I think that's a really interesting one.
Okay,
that's my top pick.
Okay, so
yeah.
we got 2 for Agile buffet. Let's see. I hate to call your votes up, but we have to. So, Natalie, what do you want?
You know what? I agree with everybody else. The Agile buffet is certainly, there's a plethora of things that we can discuss on that.
Okay. Anyone knows me because I love innovation. Natalie, I'm going to vote for yours, the product vision, because I love that. So Lee, what do you want?
I actually thought Craig's was a really interesting idea, so I was going to go for his.
Okay, so real quick. So one thing I coach teams on a lot, guys, teams need to be empowered and know how to make decisions really fast. So our intent here tonight was to show you how you can have a discussion amongst a bunch of people. You can get some ideas, and we can make a decision really fast about what we want to do. Because guess what? We got 3 votes for this Agile buffet. That's what we're going to talk about on this episode of This Agile Life. So Lee, could you get us started? A little more than you said, so we could kind of figure out how to dissect this buffet issue?
Yeah, I've been kind of playing the role over the last, for a while now, I guess, being kind of almost what Craig would have called an Agile practitioner. I'm actually calling the developer coach role. And it's kind of that embedded coach, but I've noticed that in doing that, there's a totally different way of, or more effective way of bringing about Agile change than just constantly throwing, here's a problem, here's a solution, here's a problem, here's a solution. And so I've come to realize that the things that I was seeing in the past where even myself as a coach would go into a place and say, oh, well, you should be doing pairing and you should be doing TDD and you should be doing the Kanban and you should be pulling from the right and all these little things that we can add in, right? But if you throw those all at a team all at the same time, the team members themselves can't take it all in. And you don't really get buy-in and you don't really get understanding of why you're doing these things. And in some cases, the coaches themselves don't understand why they're doing it. They just know that here are the practices that I've been told. And I hate to do this because I don't have anything against Scrum, but Scrum has a bad habit of this, that they just have these practices that they've put into the Bible and they throw the Bible at you. It's not always the case.
To be fair, XP actually says the same thing. If you do one practice, it's not going to get you the results that all the combined practices do.
Right.
Like when it was starting, they were even like, well, no, you got to do them all. And yeah, I think that's wrong too.
So we might say that you're saying that the feature we're working on is too large when we try and tackle all the processes at once.
That's a good way to put it, Matt. Yeah.
Well, so how do we get a thin vertical slice?
Well, that's the question, right?
The first thing I heard was he was saying, he's telling them they should do these things. I usually phrase it as a question. Have you considered doing this? Have you tried doing this? Asking questions, asking what they've tried, asking, first of all, what are their problems that they're trying to solve? If code quality is a problem, then code reviews and pairing might be the answer to start with first. But if I can't come up with an example, a counterexample that pairing wouldn't help with. But you might start with pairing. You might start with retrospectives. Is what I would always start with first, actually. Then you could kind of build on that.
I think that some of what you're talking about with the Agile buffet feeds into some of the other topics we actually brought up, such as people and interaction. When you're first starting with a team that is unfamiliar with practices, sometimes you need to be a little bit more prescriptive and give more rigid guidelines than you would until they get the hang of it, because it's usually through practice that people get understanding. Standing in front of a bunch of people and saying, this is why this is good. It's the light bulb moment for the individuals on the team through practicing that will get them to the point where they can actually, all those items on the buffet start to make sense. So I think that there are times where you need to be a little bit more prescriptive so that people can get into that, to get to that point of understanding.
I think you have to judge the team as you come in, right? Because you could have some team, like for example, the team that I'm working with right now. When I first came in, they already were they're a high functioning team individually, and so it was very easy to explain to them why a certain practice might be helpful to them, and for them to then say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense to me. Let's do that." And it was easy for them to have buy-in. So I can definitely see a team that is less familiar with this kind of thing and is harder to convince. It might be necessary that you come in with one thing at a time, but it's that one thing at a time, not 12 things at a time, right?
Yeah. What I was going to add, it's funny because we're kind of having some topic overlap here, which is neat. This whole idea of, because Lee, what you initially described, and if I was thinking about it, that's like the guy that goes to the buffet and literally tries to put everything on his plate at once, which is what I said initially, because that's what I thought of. But you got to put some science around that. And really, again, if you think about this idea of like change leadership, you're going to do things one at a time. And so, have a conversation, like Craig said, identify a problem. And then again, if you're kind of like a coach consultant or just a team member, go read some blogs and say, hey, let's try this. But the key thing is only to try like one thing at a time to see if it works.
I think that identifying the problem is really, as you guys both said, the core of the issue. Because I've come onto teams before where I thought, wow, we don't have these things that I am really used to. But I apologize. I turned the audio on in my headphone, and it's basically acting as one of those voice. It's making my voice in my head much slower than reality, so I apologize. I need to turn that back off. I was trying something new.
That's weird that the voices in your head have slowed down.
It would be
all right. There, I can talk
app, right? He
much
tried
better now.
It's
It's like that Android app where it delays your voice. Anyway, sorry about that. I was saying identifying the problem, much as we just went through right there, is the key to doing it, because there's a fine line, I think, with helping an agile transformation. You only need to help as much as the team wants or needs help, right? So that as someone coming in and trying to be that coach or that practitioner, it can be easy I found it easy to start solving problems that aren't necessarily problems. And so it's asking people not just what do you want to do better, but like Craig said, what is painful for you? What are your bad outcomes? I really think it can help an individual or a team zero in on the one thing to pick first.
I also think that it's like the analogy here is a drug addict, right? The first thing to getting better is to admit you have a problem. So if they don't actually see the problem and feel the problem, then you providing a solution for a problem isn't going to help.
Absolutely. And again, I like to keep relating it to the go ahead, Jason.
Oh, no. So what? No, I have kind of a different pivot on that. And I'd love to get, because I think, Natalie, you might add some injection. You might have some ideas here. Because one of the challenges in the Agile space right now, many, especially at the leadership level, have been influenced by the big pictures. Because there's the safe picture, there's the big Agile practices map that the Agile Alliance maintains. If you're familiar with large-scale Scrum, LSS, they have a big picture. And what I think causes this scenario Lee described is someone who's responsible really at the leadership level sees the big picture, whosever big picture it is, and they're like, oh my goodness, I want that all, and I want it all right now. And what do we do about that?
My additional comment with that was a little bit more on a team level, is that when a leader that is responsible for that team's success sees that problem, oftentimes doesn't have the luxury of allowing the team to learn from their mistakes. So has to jump in and give that solution, because they can see the train heading for an absolute wreck and they've got to get it back on the tracks.
But if you do that, the team never learns.
And the train will run off the tracks next week.
Can the team learn from other people, though?
So I guess this is another problem. Like we've discovered the first problem. The next problem is, hey, leadership, you need to give us the room to make these mistakes. But I think that's another tangent.
Well, not really, because I would say that's where, again, a little bit of science could come in here. And I know since Craig's here, we got to follow up on the last episode where we got to talk burn up, burn down, right? We're not going to do that, but I remember I heard that on the last episode. Was what you need some metrics, because what you should be able to do, I would hope, is say, hey, let's do this like a science experiment. So, hey, we're going to try pairing, and maybe we could see, if we're tracking story count, or maybe if we're tracking velocity. Let's see if we start pairing what happens to our velocity and use that data to have informed conversations.
What if you're giving up quality for velocity, though?
Well, you got to, okay. Yeah. This is not a measurement episode. You got to measure enough. Okay. So you can't just look at one metric. We've talked about this time and time again. But this idea of saying that let's actually try to run your team like a science fair. And when the leadership shows up with the big picture and they're like, we want this, the conversation that you need to be empowered to have with your leadership is to say, well, okay, this is a neat big picture. I really think it's neat. It's pretty. I'm sure somebody has spent lots of time. I'm sure they're selling lots of training on it. And I'm sure it's a great idea. Let's find one little piece of this big picture and let's give it a try and see what happens. And you know what? We'll try it for, here's what I want to ask, is if you try something, how long should you commit to it before you say know if it's working or not working? How do you figure that out?
I think that varies on a piece by piece. I mean, there's some things that you might try that you can see, maybe pair programming, you can see some feedback in the immediate as a developer. So say you did something like retrospectives, which happen once an iteration, you might have to wait several iterations to see good feedback from a retrospective. Craig?
First of all, retrospectives don't have to happen only once per iteration.
This is true.
The best teams I've seen did them every week.
Real quick. Let's do something new. Who thinks that's a really good idea? This idea of saying, out of all the five of us, that we should do retrospectives when we need to versus having a retrospective scheduled. All right, so who thinks it's a good idea?
I agree.
To have it when you need it?
Have it when you need it versus have it on a schedule.
Is there? Can we put a maximum on there then? Because I think you could easily slide into, well, maybe I need it, but it's not important.
So Matt, when
So
when I
it's
say about having a retrospective whenever we need it, it's like someone notices a problem and they say, "Hey team, let's turn around and talk about this problem." It's not an official retrospective, but you're doing a retrospective right there.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
okay,
That's
okay.
that's
Stop,
my
stop,
favorite
stop.
kind. I call that impromptu retrospective.
Right, and we call that
Yeah.
a turnaround. And so I would advocate people do turnarounds all day long instead of code, right?
So for our
But a
listeners,
retrospective is usually bigger than that.
so for our listeners, I apologize. That was a fun experiment.
No, it's great.
It completely got us off topic. So if you're trying to follow the conversation, all I say is I think everyone on This Agile Life tonight agrees that this
Oh,
idea
squirrel.
everyone agrees that that's a good idea. If you
I'm not sure we agree on what "as you needed" means, though. Like, I usually at the end of every few retrospectives, I'll ask, "Are we doing this too often? Not often enough?" Like, if we're having it every 2 weeks, should we have it every week? If we're having it every week, should we have it every other week? That's kind of more what I mean is as needed, plus an occasional impromptu if something's really bugging you out of band from the normal schedule. But I still think that you should have scheduled ones in addition to impromptu ones. I wouldn't want to not schedule any.
And Craig, having an official retrospective every week is the same as every iteration if you have weekly iterations, but that's a whole separate.
Yeah, no, but they don't need to be tied together. You can have 3 week iterations.
I recognize, where you were going
weekly retrospectives.
Can I ask a question? To solve this problem, why do many teams out there, especially if you have Lee on your team, if I were to say, why don't you write a working agreement that defines a service level for your retros? So we can have a retro when you need to watch the video this week because you need to see what Lee just did. And I write a policy for my team so I have something to hold.
I'll make it audible.
We can hold ourselves accountable. Okay, so we simply write this down as a reminder. Why is that a bad idea? And why do people hate it when coaches show up and encourage their teams to write working agreements like that?
It's too much process.
Yeah, it's the people over process thing.
So I've done this on a couple of occasions where you can go through. I've been on the receiving end where somebody else has facilitated this for a team that I was on, and it was a half day or a whole day sort of a ordeal, and it was this long sort of form, right?
And for the record, that was not me. Okay,
yeah
I never did that to you, Lee.
Yeah, that person will remain nameless. But I've had that happen at least twice. So it's not with two different facilitators. So it was not just the person involved. It was also the nature of all the things that people want to talk about there, right? But they were talking about minutia, and even they would agree it was minutia. So when I've facilitated these, I can generally do this in an hour to an hour and a half, maybe an hour 45 if we're pushing it.
You're saying like a chartering session to write working agreemats. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, for the things that the team thinks are important.
Okay, so not a retro. So, okay, and maybe this is important. So Natalie wants to say something, and then I want to go back to before we started the failed experiment here, to go back to what we were talking about.
What were we talking about?
Squirrels.
Mine is more a question, so I may need to hold it, and we just have to have another chat about working agreements because I might derail us further. So I am going to retract my waving of my hands and saying I want to ask a question. And let's go back to the topic at hand.
Okay.
So I believe that topic was how long do we let something go to get value out of it?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. How do we, and guess what I'm going to say? It's just going to go full circle.
Too long.
No, what I'm going to say is I would love, and I've actually done it where I've seen this. I haven't seen it. I guess I need to blog on it because I've seen people present on this at conferences. They call it like the experiment canvas, where you write it down and you make it like an experiment, and you say, you know what, we commit to it as a team. We're going to do this for a month. And maybe you put some criteria that if it's going really bad, you can terminate it, but it gets everyone committed to trying to practice so they stay focused, and you can get some data to determine if it's working or not. So, but you got to write it down. So number one, I know Lee's going to hate it. Although you could write it on a big poster in about 3 minutes, Lee, so it doesn't take a lot of time. Now, I know Craig wants to tell me something. So, Craig, what do you think?
So, my current team, we have 3-week iterations, and we have a retro every 3 weeks. One thing we've added is a check-in every week to see how we're doing on our action items. So that's kind of helpful. Hey, are we really trying this, or do we have some challenges that we can adjust before we have a full assessment at the next retrospective? But I'd like to take it like on a case-by-case basis. If we're trying pairing, pairing is one of those things that it takes a while to learn how to do well, right? So I wouldn't want to give up after 1 week and say, oh, well, we're on our next retrospective, pairing didn't work. I think I would want to give pairing a little bit longer, unless, it's just tearing our team apart. And then I'd say, well, let's stop the experiment and let's try something else. But I like to take things on a case-by-case basis.
I agree.
So, and to sort of further, support that, it really does depend on what it is. If you're switching up the length of your iteration, you've got to give that time to see whether that's working. If there's issues with your stand up and things are going too long, or people aren't, sort of adhering to the proper practices, that could be a very shorter a much shorter turnaround. So it is very much dependent on the particular practice or activity that's going on in the team.
So let me try a real life one here, and this is kind of goes back to actually the best example I can think of. It has to do with what Natalie brought up, and so Natalie, your problem before was having product ownership issues. So here's my question: what is the role of leadership or sponsorship of a team to suggest I'm going to leave it at suggest. I'm not going to say mandate. Suggest that a team adopt a practice. So you have a team. You observe the problem that Natalie mentioned, where they don't have a vision. They're struggling, and the leadership says, "Hey, why don't you guys go do one of the games about vision? So go build a Lego thing, or go build a product box or something. Those are practices. Go do that." And the team's like, I don't want to do that. And it sounds dumb, but it might help. What do you do?
So I've been an Agile retrospective facilitator for a team I was on, which isn't the best practice, but it was all we had available. And someone came to me with a problem, and honestly, we were a little bit manipulative on our game. We did a game that we knew would have a certain outcome that sort of gave us the outcome we wanted. So in some ways, you can sort of lead the horse to water, right? You can't necessarily make them drink, but you can at least lead them towards the solution you're looking for, that that they need, right? But sometimes you got to let them.
I'm interjecting, but isn't that the definition of coaching?
Perhaps, yeah.
Part of it.
Yeah. So, you can see that they need something, but you kind of have to let them believe that they found their own path.
Yeah, I'll share. I've been in some conversations recently, especially about what I'm going to call the core practices of product ownership. So product vision, whole team story writing, writing stories that are short, that meet the 3 C's, and maybe even writing them on note cards with a pen. And again, these are practices that, at least in my experience, they are proven to promote whole team collaboration, and they work. They have to be encouraged, and sometimes people just put their hands up and they say, I don't want to do that. And what's a pen? Oh, geez, that's hilarious. Sorry, reading the chat log here. Pen, it's this thing I'm holding that I hold when I talk. So watch our video. You'll see me holding my pen all the time. But whatever, these practices work. But sometimes people say, what? No. So if I'm leadership, how do I challenge? So Lee, how would I challenge you to say, okay, this crazy coach guy out here talking on This Agile Life said that I should make you write stories and sit in a room together and work together. And I know you guys don't want to do that. How do I encourage you to do something else that will provide the same outcome?
When you say provide something else that will provide the same outcome, what do you mean by that?
Well, so again, so for product ownership, like Natalie said, you got a team, they don't understand the vision of the product. So they're constantly thrashing. They don't understand that they're making up work. They're staying focused. They don't understand that they got a deadline coming up, and instead they're just refactoring because they don't see the big picture.
And what are you asking then?
And so leadership is saying, leadership shows up and they say, or the Agile Fairy shows up and they say, hey, let's all go build this cereal box about our project. And the team says, no, Jason, that's a really dumb idea. We don't want to do that. That sounds like a waste of time. And okay, well, what else could you do? Okay, Natalie wants to get in on it. Okay, so Natalie, what could you...
The cereal box, actually, and we've done this several times, is actually great. And I think that that leadership has actually seen the value of that.
No.
And it's not...
We're going the other way.
Time out. Leadership wants the cereal box, and leadership has endorsed it. The team looks at it and says, that's dumb. We don't want to do it. That's the problem.
They want Captain Crunch, not Cheerios.
So, and we've had that resistance too. This is stupid. And you bring out the cereal box and all of the markers and everything like that. And like, are we back in kindergarten? What's going on here? Like that kind of stuff. And it's really just a matter of having some facilitators there that say, just bear with me, because ultimately you see that the conversation is the important part of that. The cereal box becomes a non-event by the end of it all. But it's the conversation that happens with the product owner and the team that is the key part of that at the end of it.
I have to say,
it really is having somebody trying to that has a relationship with the team that can help let them take a little bit of a leap of faith.
I have to say, when I deal with situations like that, my process is really to diffuse the whole thing and say, and to make them to not make them feel like they're being that they're going through some exercise, right? It's not an exercise. We had this meeting scheduled, and we had this thing? Do you guys want to try this? This sounds like some. I think we can have some fun with this. Most of the time you can get at least enough buy-in to say, we're here in a room anyway. We might as well do this. And then as you go, you can kind of reaffirm the lessons that you're wanting to get out of it.
Bait and switch.
Exactly. You got it. But in a gentle way.
So Natalie brought up leap of faith. And I think a lot of the Agile practices do take a leap of faith. So the question is, how do you get the team to take that leap?
How do you have enough trust to get them to believe you?
So you probably can't take those leaps until you've built up that trust with smaller things, right? I think pair programming is a leap of faith for sure. Wait a minute. So I'm going to put two people doing the same thing and it's going to be faster. Well, first of all, I claim it's not going to be faster. It's going to be a little bit slower, but you're going to make it up in quality QA bugs and stuff like that. But yeah, I think you have to build the trust on small things before you take the big things like pair programming.
Yeah, I mean, Craig, you're right. And actually, it's really a pairing. You're doing the leadership angle, which is the productivity. But think about it at the team level, where it's more about the transparency. It's like, boy, I really have to show my hand, and my pair will ultimately know what I know and what I do not know. And if you're a new person on a team, if you don't understand how Agile needs to be in an environment where people are empowered, people work with respect, and people show empathy towards each other. Hey, dude, I don't know how to refactor that. I mean, I need to sit down like tomorrow and go find Lee and pair with him, and it would be hilarious because Lee'd be like, Jason, you are so like rusty, like whatever. But you know what? Lee's not going to hold that against me. But if you're brand new to this, that is a leap of faith, because in many organizations, they have other systems, human resources, whatever in place that have processes and procedures that go against that desire to have empathy. So this is tough. What I wanted to say though about this is there is another thing where again, remember the fundamental values of Agile. Agile's about collaboration and working together. And so you have to be willing to engage in collaborative behavior. And if you don't like doing that for whatever reason, that's a problem. And you can learn and change, but you gotta be willing to collaborate.
That's a whole episode's worth of question right there.
It is. And in that spirit of collaboration, one of the things that none of us have mentioned when we said, I'm management, I want people to make this cereal box and work through their product owner vision problems, and the team says no, we've talked about offering them alternatives and other things. Do you ever just ask them why and try to understand their objections to it? Right? Is that a valid path here, or are we past that and we're just saying I'm management and I'm just being nice to pretend that I'm going to give you a choice here?
So the asking the why, and I think that there are times that teams or even whole organizations can develop a very anti-mentality in general, and I do believe there are times where even if somebody doesn't want to go down that path, there are many things about being employed at a company that you have to do, because that's what you're told to do. So there's some aspects of that where, like even if somebody doesn't want to participate or thinks it's stupid, there's a whole bunch of administrative tasks that I have to do on a daily basis that I think are ridiculous, but it has meaning to somebody else. And okay, make it as least inconvenient as possible. But I think there are times where you have to say, I know you don't want to do it, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway.
Well, and I think this almost kind of goes full circle, because what this whole Agile buffet can what it can create is this perception that, hey, I could just take these practices and I can ask the people in my organization to do them. But that could change. I mean, maybe the people in your organization, they don't have the behavior to allow that. So that's when this can become really challenging, and it's tough. So, Craig, you want to get in. What are you going to say here?
So I think the way to get around the buffet problem where you're putting everything on your plate is to think of it as a toolbox. You've got these different practices that are tools that you can use. You don't generally get all your tools out to solve one problem, or you never get all your tools out all at the same time, right? You get
unless
the tools
you
out
lose them
as you need them. So I've actually started on a book on Agile, and the idea is the subtitle is actually a toolbox of Agile practices, and I give you these Agile practices in sort of a recommended way to introduce them in a specific order, a suggested order. Let's call it a suggested order. And retrospective is, to me, always the starting point. But I mean, working up your way to TDD, pair programming, continuous delivery, continuous no estimates, things like that more advanced teams do. I wouldn't throw them all at a team just starting out by any means.
So I have to say, going back to something that Natalie said, I have to say that when you're looking at all of the different practices, and especially these things that you just have to do, I think Agile is the right. It kind of teaches us to say why. Why is it that we're doing this particular practice? You're constantly asking that question, and to me, that's the whole idea with the buffet. Is you can't just go in with all of these practices. You have to, at least with the team, ask the question, why is it that you are doing things the way you're doing them? And is there another way? Think of all the possible ways you could do it. Here are some possible things that we know have worked in the past. They may or may not work for you, but that's essentially the core of it. Is you have to constantly be asking, why do we do what we do?
I just want to add to that, to support that the teams where we've had the most struggle with adopting Agile practices are the ones with coaches that were the least adept at explaining the why this makes sense to actually do. So when you're introducing those concepts, if you don't have somebody that is skilled in actually explaining those, that's oftentimes when teams will reject it.
And one thing also that I'd like to touch on is that a great way to get teams to adopt things, I think, is to show them. Craig, you said you're a Agile practitioner, not an Agile coach, correct? And that a lot of times if you see a team is or you're on a team and the team is having this problem, right? Like Jason, you mentioned with the pairing, or take TDD for example, right? If you're working with someone and they're struggling to get through a problem, rather than sitting down and pointing out, hey, here's a tool in the toolbox, and explain to them what TDD is and how to go through it, I find it just to start writing tests with them, right? And just start doing the practice you hope will bring benefit to their problem. And it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Either it adds value and some pain is relieved and people will hopefully start building that trust and want to do that practice, or it didn't help in that situation. It's not the right tool for this time. And that's just getting in and just kind of rolling with it is I think the most effective way, even on an individual to individual level, to start getting that belief system built in the tools in that toolbox.
You know what? I'm gonna you know me. I have to throw a game idea out there. It wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't do that. The game idea I would throw out there is, which would be kind of fun, especially like for a team inception. Like if you're just getting started on a team, or you're starting like a transformation or an adoption project or a coaching type project, to like make a metaphorical buffet of Agile practices, and put them all out there in the first place, and then ask people to describe them, like metaphorically using food terminology. Because what this will show, and this goes back to this change leadership thing that I guess I kind of really want to talk about tonight. So I'm thinking about it a lot in the background here. It's going to show you what people are most interested in their subconscious mind, because the things that they probably start to focus on and describe are the things they're most interested in. And so maybe if you do that, you could find, oh, here's the one practice that everyone thinks is going to taste like ice cream, and for whatever reason, and that's the one they start with. And I just think that would be fun. So I have an idea about that I'll talk about in my picks a little bit in just a moment. So when we get to that, but anyone else got thoughts on this? Otherwise, because the way I think it would be cool to wrap this up is, and we'll do this in just a moment. So Lee, this was the topic you brought up. So I would like you to synthesize what you got out of this conversation that you're going to put into practice, you know, because you shared this challenge with us. But before we do that, and as you're thinking and laughing, does anyone else have a final comment before we ask Lee to close this out?
I want to go back to focus on the pains and the whys as you try and figure out which of the things to do, which of the things will actually benefit you. That's the most successful way I've seen to pick an item off the buffet.
Yeah, and with that, before Lee goes in there, I was going to say is, again, listen to our episode 76 with Woody Zuhl. It was 2 before this one, and where he says, you know, the whole idea with no estimates is question everything. Hey, why do I need to fill out this project status report, or this financial report? You know, why do I need to do that? Why? Ask that question, and go to, you know, try to keep things lean. So, and you should be empowered to do that as a member of an Agile team, regardless of what your role is. So Lee, what are you going to do with all of the wonderful free advice that you have gotten from the awesome Agile coaches that help you understand how Agile you are on this episode of This Agile Life?
Well, here's what I heard that I think I can refine my practices. First, start with retrospectives. Retrospectives can give you a forum for asking the whys. So you delve into them with the whys. You pick the experiment that you want to go after. You find some metrics to back up that experiment and learn from it. Keep at it for a little while. take one step at a time and figure out what the team thinks is going to be the biggest bang for the buck, one thing before another, and then go from there.
Hallelujah.
This week's hottest picks.
So, we got some picks this week, and we'll just go in the order in our notes. So, wow, he has been on the spot so much tonight. Lee, what are your picks for this episode of This Agile Life?
Wow. Okay, so I have to preface this by saying that my youngest daughter, who is 11 now, is really into Minecraft. I mean, really into Minecraft. More than I thought she could ever get into a computer game. But in the process, she's also been making up all of these great ideas about how to mod Minecraft, because she's seen these mods and she thinks they're really cool, and she's got all these great ideas. And it takes some decent Java chops to be able to mod Minecraft. However, I have found a couple of resources that I'm going to try to delve into. And I have to say, I have not looked deeply into these, but I would love to hear anybody else that has worked with these. One of them is an article from Wired Magazine on their website, which is New Minecraft Mod Teaches You Code as You Play. And I thought that's a really cool thing. How about a mod that lets you mod and can teach you stuff? And specifically kids, aimed at like 9 to 14-year-olds. Along those same lines, I also found an online course specifically for 8 to 14-year-olds called Mod Design 1, where you learn to code in Java with Minecraft. So it was the winner of the 2015 Parents' Choice Gold Medal Award from some organization that I may have no knowledge of. But it looks like a great resource, and I am anxious to see if my daughter will take to them.
Okay, Lee, those are some great picks. So, for who wants to go next?
I'll go, since you said we're going to go in order.
But you know what? I felt bad. I felt that because you know what? I felt like I was asserting my dominance, like John Sextro does. So I want to promote radical self-organization. And guess what? Yes, I'm an MBA, and I'm promoting self-organization. So, however we want to do it, whoever wants to go.
Just go in order. All right. My first pick is Pairing with Junior Developers. It's a blog entry by Sarah May. It's got really good advice when a senior developer is working with a junior developer. I recently was doing some mentoring with some kids that were just getting started with web development, and I experienced some of these things myself. You know, when you're mentoring, you can't just take over the keyboard and like, hey, let me do it. And it's kind of the same with junior developers. She advises actually not touching the keyboard for, an entire day at a time if possible. My second pick is a app called, or a tool called Packer. It's used for building server images, and it's by HashiCorp, the same guys that gave us Vagrant. And my third pick is DigitalOcean, which is an excellent hosting company, and very simple, cheap, great servers. And I think probably my favorite part, though, is a very simple API.
Okay, those are good. So since we have decided to follow the list, Natalie, you're up.
Okay, so I'm going to go really short with my pick, but then I want to go back to both of the last picks and challenge. So the Phoenix Project, I'm currently reading this, so I can't really go into a lot of detail because I'm very early on in the book. And so if it's a repeat, because I know it came out in 2013, so I apologize, but it's because it's being very widely read around our organization, and I'm sure, Matt, you've probably either heard of it or been told to read it. So that is my pick. But going back to Lee and Craig. So Lee, you talked about the Minecraft programming, and also Craig, you talked about junior developers. And both of that sort of combined with young girls getting into coding. I say that we should hold some kind of workshop using those resources and those techniques to get women or young girls in St. Louis involved in coding.
There are some of those things. I know about a few of them. I can point us out. So there's
Yeah, Natalie.
I think it's called Coder Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying I want you guys to get into that.
So Natalie, we're already there because I helped to Natalie. I coordinate a hackathon at the University of Missouri St. Louis, specifically for women in programming. But that is for college. So you're telling us to go younger.
I think it's a great idea. I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, Lee. Hey, Lee's up. Lee's gonna do it all. Woohoo!
I'll get in touch with you, Lee.
Okay.
All right, so now we will change the focus from the St. Louis area to a person out on the West Coast. What we
Out
got,
here.
Matt?
So I was actually inspired by several of the picks along the way as well. So I wanted to share in that same vein of teaching children to code. For anyone in the Seattle area, there's a great resource that I've found since I've been here called SeattleCoderDojo.com. They sponsor free every Saturday or once a month Saturdays. I honestly don't know. Code events for kids. The company I work for hosted one on Pi Day on March 14th and brought in Raspberry Pis and brought kids from 8 to 16 in and worked with the Scratch, the program from MIT that allows them to do drag and drop programming, and the general purpose input output on the Raspberry Pis to build some cool little tools and robots and flashing lights and all kinds of fun stuff. It's a really great program. So if you're in the area, check it out, or if you're not in the area, check it out. My next pick, inspired by Craig's Packer suggested, was a project that I've been using here called Chocolatey. It's a Windows PowerShell based kind of apt-get or yum repository. It's great. Allows you to install packages on Windows much easier than downloading and exeing. And then two more here. One more maybe. We have a blog post from a young lady named Kate Heddleston about arguments and cultures of arguments. Jason, you talked through the show about working in Agile as a community of respect and empathy. And to be frank, in a male-dominated engineer world, it's often easy to cross that line from trust, respect, and empathy into argumentation, and the loudest podcast host wins, right? So it's a really good take on that, and something to remind us to kind of focus on that empathy and that respect. And I think that's enough. I'm gonna leave my last one out. Not that it's not a great pick. That's plenty.
So I have obviously done something to offend Matt.
No, I was listening to old shows, and that was mentioned previously.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Oh, I want to share. So I have a few. So I'll mention my picks here. So I did type in a pick. Go listen to old episodes of This Agile Life, something I did when I was on a road trip recently, and I will share a confession. I had never listened to episode 0 until about 3 weeks ago, which, first and foremost, Matt, you were on it. You were awesome.
I was.
But it was like, okay, we talked about no estimates, although we didn't call it no estimates. We were talking about really continuous delivery, although we weren't in Kanban, although we really weren't using the terms we use now. And it was just fascinating. So if you're a more recent subscriber and you've never gone back and listened to the, I want to say the old shows before we went to the techno music, back when we had kind of the rock and roll music, there's some good stuff back there. So go back and listen to those. So here's a weird one. I'm trying to do weird picks now. A couple weeks ago, we talked about, or a couple episodes ago, we talked about the open space. I found an elementary school for sale, and I said on that episode, I said if I were going to find a space to have a company that did Agile, I'd love to find like an old school because it has a bunch of rooms. And so if you're in the Midwest, it's actually in Ladue, Missouri. It's right off of Clayton Road. It's right by, if you're familiar with St. Louis, it's right by Plaza Frontenac. But there's an old elementary school there that's for sale by the school district in town here that you could buy, and you could run your company there. So if anyone's looking to do a startup, go buy that school, and it'll be really cool. So free advice.
Yeah, because real estate in Frontenac is so cheap. That sounds like a good buy.
For your startup, yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm being creative here. I will put the link there. People can go look at the school online. So, okay. But then the last three I have are actually all live events. So these are all live events that if you want to get out and do something, check these out. And two of them are in St. Louis. One of them is in Denver. So in St. Louis, on April 9th, 2015, we're going to have a Lean Kanban with a keynote speaker. His name's Doug Dockery. He's from Rally Software. He's going to be talking about ways to measure value and to make sure that you're delivering the most value you can. So it's on Thursday evening, April 9th, 2015. We'll put the link to register. It's free. It's in the West County area of St. Louis, Missouri. Now, also in St. Louis on Friday, April 17th, 2015, we're going to have the first ever full day public open space in St. Louis. It's going to be held on the campus of Washington University, which is in Midtown, and it's an open space. So things like that game I mentioned about maybe doing the buffet and doing some metaphors, maybe we'll do it at the open space. If anyone wants to come and code at the open space, we've got some dev labs. So Craig, you can come and code, show us some cool code stuff on the open space. Amos, a long time ago, he wanted a This Agile Life conference. Nothing is stopping Amos or John or anyone else from coming to the open space and sharing something. You'll be able to register online. We'll put the link to register in the show notes. It's probably going to be about $20 since it's an independent event. So $20 is just covers the food and stuff, to make sure we can have it. So check that out. Last but not least, right after this comes out, April 3rd, Friday, I'm at Mile High Agile, and I'm going to be talking about gamification of performance reviews, and I'll be explaining how all of the evil things that human resources makes us do in our performance reviews, many times it puts Agile values at risk. And so we'll talk about some ways you can use gamification to improve that process. So if you're in the Denver area in April 2015, come and check that out. It's downtown Denver. I believe it's at the Hyatt. So those were my picks. So guess what, everyone? That's all the time we have for today. So we thank you, and I want to say we do thank you for investing your time to listen to us. We value your feedback, and so with your feedback, we can make this podcast better. So again, look us up on the web, look us up on Twitter. You can tweet us at This Agile Life, and guess what? Most importantly, everyone out there, Agile's hard. So keep learning and keep living this Agile life.
This Agile Life is brought to you by a community of Agile developers and coaches aspiring to spread the word about this groundbreaking approach to software development. Join us at thisagilelife.com/community.